Okay, so here we are with Divine Right, a game that has far too few thumbs, given what it is. I would have expected it collected more. It got 18. I've only had it for 7 years. It was given to me as a gift by a viewer, an absolutely ridiculously wonderful gift when it comes down to it. And I've held off playing it for, I don't know, for my own weird reasons. I always find something else I want to do instead. Um, my history with this was I've played it once. When I was in Buffalo, a friend of mine had it, and we broke it out and played it one time, and it was amusing. But I didn't really recall it as being, that sort of the fantasy game that I'm looking for. And the closest that's come to that is Scandinavia, which I did cover quite a while back. Otherwise, most fantasy war games just, I don't know, they just haven't been rich enough in a lot of ways. Now, this one has a lot of chrome in it, especially if, as I'm going to play the advanced game, maybe with a couple of options in it. If I remember them. I like this one. But it has other issues to go with it. First of all, there's the color scheme, which is, I don't know. It just turns me off to see these kind of bright colors, especially with a hex map. I don't mind as much with an area map when there's lots of colors. I also don't remember much about this game as being, like, when I was playing it, I don't remember it really kind of wowing me with, like, the combat or anything like that. Game not long after it, Albion, really made me want that game to work. But that game didn't work because you end up with just big stacks of units and you can't even win the game. It just ends in a loss to both players pretty much automatically. There's no way to get a grasp. This one, I think, is very winnable. There's no way it isn't winnable. The only other thing I can kind of compare it with, and the colors kind of remind me of that, is Dragon Pass. I also have, see, I can't remember either the name that I have it under, which is the French name. It's like Didier Nilwans or something like that. Or the prior name, Vefik Lorantha, which is basically a Dragon Pass-like game. Unfortunately, I only have it in the French edition, which has kept me from playing it. Especially, like, my intention had been, if I had things that I needed to deal with, because I think I have, like, a lousy translation, and then I have the French rules, and sometimes I can clarify things there, was that I could have my wife help translate little bits of it that I really needed to get clarity on. But I've just not broken that out. That may be a sign of me not liking Dragon Pass as much as I thought I did. I know that, I had issues with that. This one of the biggest issues is the rulebook itself. TSR doesn't know how to write rules. Maybe most role-playing organizations, game companies, don't really know how to write rules. It's overly verbose, but it's also like the design. And I noticed this in the basic game. When I got to the advanced stuff, where it's all kind of special cases and chrome and everything, I'm fine with that. But the base rules of the game, the combat, the diplomacy, the mechanisms that are core to the game, unfortunately, it feels like they started writing rules, and somebody said, oh, that won't work because of this. So then they added exceptions or special cases or whatever just to clarify, to fix things. There's weird shit where, like, it could have been much, much simpler and more streamlined. And certainly the wording, like, it's way too wordy for how simple a game it actually is. And then, I don't know how I feel about this. There's tons of stuff along here. Now, most of this is charts and stuff. It's repeated in the rule book. I don't know how easily I'm going to be able to deal with this. They did make an attempt at player aids. These back couple of pages are designed to be folded, and actually they're perforated so you can tear them out or whatever. I'm not going to do that, obviously. Yeah. Although had I gotten it in 1980 or whatever, I would have probably, just because, hey, it has instructions to do so. Let's look over what we have. We have a very, very kind of simple looking map, but with lots of color on it. I think those colors are to represent the different nationalities, with brown being kind of a neutral area. And that's why there's so much color in play. There are better ways to represent this kind of stuff. The actual terrain, we got things like hills and forests and mountains, and obviously sea, which is dark purple. And yeah, the colors are going to match the colors of the army pieces, and those are going to be the various nationalities in the game. There's a ton of nationalities. The game holds 6 players, but you're going to create alliances with non-player factions. And for that purpose, there are a set of ruler cards which represent all the different rulers in the game for each of the nationalities. And you shuffle those and deal them out, and that gets you your starting players. If you're not playing with the advanced rules, you leave a few out. And then there's a bunch of personality cards that go to the non-player ones and represent special elements about those players, about those nations. Well, about that particular ruler for the nation, because if the ruler dies, it gets replaced, which I think is a nice little touch. I know I'm mostly, not very positive about this in a lot of ways. The main reason I look at it and say, wow, what a wonderful gift, is this thing goes for a fucking fortune. I mean, I don't know. It's not stupidly priced, especially like something with, this with a hard board or something. It would go for $80, $100 from GMT nowadays. So, but for games from this period, it has maintained its value against inflation at the very least. I've got this usurper card separate. That's another character who can be generated similar to these rulers. When a ruler's been deposed, killed, whatever, you're able to raise up a usurper in his place. But normally those rulers will come back as they go. And then we got a bunch of diplomacy cards, which are going to be modifiers for your actions to perform diplomacy and try to convince people over. Each nationality has its own troop. They have special information. So this has, I believe, forest and mountain capability. And all of its units will have that capability. They all have 1 strength point. Their movement allowance is up in the right-hand corner. Leaders give you the stack that they're with an improved movement allowance. What the hell's this? Oh, that's the ambassador, yeah. So each nation has an ambassador who you send out to other nations in order to sway them. And you use the diplomacy cards. Those can give you bonuses. If you're going for non-nations, certain special pieces that are on the board, you don't actually go to you don't go to a nation, you go to the special location that they appear, and that will actually generate this special thing. The special things include mercenaries, monsters, stuff like that. Like I said, the actual movement and combat in this game is relatively simple. One more thing that we have. Here are some of the monsters. Yeah, these player order chits. I'm going to need to steal a cup from Mr. President. It's way too hot to be playing Mr. President upstairs right now. I'm hoping there's enough room on this table for this game. It's going to be tight because there are stacks of leaders. There are piles and piles of leaders. And like I said, there's 6 players, and each is going to have multiple nations under their control as the game goes on. And then they lose them, you know. What was I lost at? I don't remember. I don't recall. I have no memory at all. Yeah, I was lost somewhere. Yeah. Okay. So, the setup, you basically shuffle these things, you hand one out to each player, that's the country they start with. The countries are not necessarily balanced in any way. You give them their troops, they set them up. Their troops actually, I believe, have names of locations on them that they start in. So if I look at, no, that's ambassador. If I look at this, I see the Crag. And then that nation, and I think that's the Zorns, to be honest. Well, there's the Crag. No, it's these down here, this pale green. Those are dwarves. Okay, the Zorns are goblins. I don't know. I thought these were dwarves, but then I looked at the ambassador and he looked, I don't know, misshapen in a way that didn't look very dwarfish. It's got a rich backstory and everything to it. I read through that. It obviously feels like somebody's D&D campaign, you know, and the backstory they built for that. It's not really rich feeling, and in some ways it feels silly. Not as silly as Swords and Sorcery does. Yes, we'll get to that eventually. There aren't, you know, the absolute joke features in this. And in a weird sort of way, not as silly as Glorantha does, but Glorantha is so rich that, like, the very silly things in it don't feel as silly. I don't know. It's hard to explain. All right. The base sequence of play. Again, you're going to randomize player order each turn, so nobody gets the advantage of always going before someone else. Then the first player gets to roll on a random events table where weird shit can happen. They could get extra troops, whatever. Their king can die. Actually, their king can't die. In fact, if you lose your player king, you lose the game and you're out. And in a way, that's one of the ways of winning the game, is wipe all the other players out. That's sort of the grand campaign, although they don't actually describe it here. Normally, it is supposed to be a 20-turn game. I think we'll play it that way unless I feel like going further for some reason. All right, anyway, you roll for events. You draw one of the diplomacy cards, which I do have to shuffle more, so I might as well show you a couple of them. So it's got a title and it's got a bonus. That's just your diplomacy bonus. But some of them, like this is something that allows you to bring a special mercenary in, which is the Scum. If you go to the huts of the Scum, you can generate them there with this. I don't know if you have to roll a die to do that. Some are nastier, like aren't just a bonus. Like this is threats +2, but if you fail, you get a penalty. Shit like that. These are tiny, tiny little, and not at all thick. This is, this is from the same era that, like, I don't know if you're familiar with, like, Status Pro football or baseball or whatever. The cards from that, they're just kind of a thin stock that you had to fold and tear out or cut or whatever. It's thicker than paper, but not by much. The rule book, on the other hand, is real paper. It's not very heavy grain. The map is decent. It's got some pooch because of the grain. Anyway, you draw that diplomacy card, and you're allowed to play, I believe, one of these per turn. At this time, you can have your ambassador. I think you only have one for your own nation. I don't think you get them for all your subordinates. Perform one of the following functions. Ambassadors basically teleport in this game. Basically jump to a non-allied, non-player monarch, not allied to anyone, possibly play a diplomacy card, and make a diplomatic die roll. If you get a 6 or more, that monarch and his kingdom join your faction. Or you could go to an enemy allied non-player monarch. You go to the actual monarch, and you make a diplomacy roll, same as before. Now you need a 7, and it'll take him out of the other player's hands. Okay, now some weird ones. Attempt to assassinate one enemy allied non-player monarch. You can't go after the players. You put the ambassador on the enemy allied monarch. Both players roll a die, and if there's a high roll, whoever gets the high roll kills the other one. So the ambassador could die, which takes him out of play for 2 turns. The king could die, which takes him out of play for 2 turns, but more importantly, also removes him from that faction. There are penalties to doing this. You could end up banished from that kingdom and not able to do ambassadorships to them anymore. And trying to think what else. Yeah, and you're only allowed to do this, I think, once per kingdom. You can try to assassinate each king once, whether banished or not. Now this is a pain in the ass because there aren't markers for all this. You're going to have a bunch of logs for various things, including victory points. There's no victory point track. It's kind of weird. The game came with a bunch of extra counters that could have been that. The game also came with these SPI style dice. Now this is really odd because this one is different from these two. It's a different size and a different die. I have the suspicion that these dice did not come with the game. Simply because I don't remember TSR ever, like, I don't know what TSR dice I had, to tell you the truth. I'm trying to think if I own any other TSR games. I've played one other, which is the Battle of Five Armies. Boy, was that a mess. That kind of shied me away from ever buying any of their games. And then when they took over SPI, I really disliked where they ended up going. So I had like Trail of the Fox. Basically, they fulfilled everything except the lifetime subscriptions. So I had a subscription to S&T still, and I know that Trail of the Fox came out with glossy counters and glossy map, and it really made me miserable, especially since it didn't match the printing quality of the original Desert Fox, so the two don't match together properly. But some of their later games, basically everything beyond, I think, the first one, which was probably already printed and ready to go by the time the takeover happened. I just really did not like the components that they were putting out. And yeah, they were side-mounted too. Fuck that. Like, side-mounted nowadays is okay, You can just kind of file it down a little bit. But those side mounteds were just a bitch to clip or anything, and just annoying to me. Okay, anyway, where are we? We're lost. So, yeah, you can attempt to assassinate an enemy ambassador. Also, and again, you're going to have to be keeping track of all of this on paper. The victory points, it could have easily been on a track, but they wanted to put all these charts, which I don't even know if I'm going to be able to cope with. Yeah. And these are not reproduced in the player aids. The player aids are like a bunch of critters and stuff. Just one copy. Okay, you can attempt to assassinate one allied non-player monarch. You can attempt to duel an enemy ambassador. You jump onto the other ambassador, and you both roll off. Whoever gets the high roll kills the other guy. I don't think there's any penalty to this, but again, you can only do this once per player. So you get to assassinate each other player's... You get to try to assassinate each other player's ambassador once. That feels really iffy. I guess if you've got nowhere to use your ambassadors and they have a place, both of these capabilities, they could have been left out of the game as far as I'm concerned. They're so minor. You can attempt to raise a barbarian army. This is an advanced rule. We'll be playing with it. The ambassador goes to any pale brown, that's this stuff, clear terrain hex, unoccupied by the enemy, on the north or south edges of the playing map. Okay. Yeah. You don't have to... You don't play a diplomacy card for this. You roll a die. On a 3 through 6, that many barbarians are brought into play at that hex in the service of the player monarch. Each player monarch is going to have one barbarian tribe assigned to him. As soon as they do this, they can get one of these. And these are kind of weird because these guys look like... These guys were kind of misprinted, but they're the blanks. All the ones that actually need the name have the name visible on them. I thought I was really screwed with, I'm looking at these and it looks like there's words on top and bottom. These are all the same. They just didn't align them as carefully. These are a little off, but not too bad. And they have the important thing on them, which is the name of the particular tribe. So like if you have the cannibals, then you can't have barbarians of any other tribe, but these unnamed ones can stack under your cannibals and fill in your thing. You're only allowed a total of 15 barbarians total. I don't know what that is. That may be, I think there's 4 here. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah. So there are exactly the amount of barbarians available that you're allowed to have. Now, if you recruit barbarians and there aren't any that you can take in the pool, you get to take blank ones from other players. So that's kind of potent. Now there's a bunch of stuff that's not listed on here. There are a bunch of diplomacy cards which activate non-allied, non-player, non-monarchs. Things like the Scum, that card that I turned over. You have to go to the huts of the Scum, and I think if you have the right card, you just get them. But your ambassador has to actually go there. Okay, and your ambassador, wherever he is, that's where you can do your one action. Okay, then if you've got any sieges currently underway, you get to resolve them. And they are, I believe, basically a 1 in 6 chance of taking a space that you have under siege. And sieging places is kind of complicated. Then, you may move as many of your units as you wish. This is all pretty much standard wargaming hex-based movement. We have movement allowance costs here. It's not easy to read because the movement points are not listed. So like a river costs you 2, hills cost 2. They're all cumulative, and something like the mountain stops your movement and you have to have enough movement points to enter into the space. Now, what's kind of funky about this, your stacking is by nationality. So if you have allied forces, you can't stack with them. But mercenaries and barbarians aren't allowed to stack with anything, I think, except maybe some one special mercenary. But your mercenaries can stack in with your regular stuff. And the mercenaries is this pool here. I don't know. I wanted to keep it to one counter tray. I sorted it into two, and I'm like, there's no need for that. Okay. So, where are we? Yeah, if you have a leader stacked with units, it moves those units with its movement allowance, which is generally going to be higher than it can move them with its movement allowance, which is generally higher than the unit stack. And it also imparts its movement capabilities onto any units that are following it. This is especially important with mercenaries or whatever, so that you can march them through the woods if you have a woods bonus with your regular army. But you can't combine nationalities and like bring one nationality through terrain that's difficult with your leader or whatever. Then you resolve combat. Combat's going to be fairly simple. It is basically competing die rolls, like with the assassination checks. But if you have odds on the other player, you get +1 per level of odds. So if you have 2 to 1, you get a +1 to your die roll. Some leaders, some magic items, some stuff give you a bonus as well. But a +1 bonus is a big deal. That's the main of the game. You get victory points for doing stuff, for glory or whatever. And doing stuff is like sacking opponents' cities, killing their leaders. Got a list of them somewhere. And basically at the end of 20 turns, whoever has the most victory points, dead or alive, wins the game. Here's the list. So, plundering their castles or their royal castles is worth some, and capturing and killing their leaders is worth something. Worth quite a bit. We could pretty much stop there, and if you don't want the combing through the rules and getting all the special cases, that is really pretty much the game. Sieges we haven't covered yet, so they're kind of important. Okay. Here we've got a list of the different things activate. Is this what we've got? Okay, so this has bring in a special mercenary. I just skipped it over here. Yeah, this is the bring in a special mercenary. Cool. The appropriate card is played, turned face up, and read aloud. The ambassador and the special mercenary are put together in the same space. Okay. Yeah, I really didn't see it there. Okay. Ambassadors are mortal, and they be killed. Not everything is. 2 game turns have to pass before their successor takes over. It's really, they get placed 3 turns in advance. Okay. When you deactivate a force, its troops go back on its card. There may not be room for that with this much table. This is going to eat up a lot of space. So I'm going to put them back here. Every now and then, the game's not good about this. It says things like eliminated, removed from play, and removed from the game. Those 3 terms are used in different places without being specifically explained. I believe anywhere where it doesn't say removed from the game, it means that they can be recovered. So if you lose troops, they're eliminated. You can definitely rebuild those, but there's, I think, one place where something is, well, no, there may be 2. There's a couple of places where things are removed from the game. But then there's also the removed from play, which feels very much like removed from the game, but I don't think it means the same. I think it means eliminated. All right, we got to swap batteries. I need to check the time or the sky or something. I had a beautiful, beautiful sunset yesterday, and it heartens me and makes me want to go see today's. There's like this game, man. It really kind of was. More pinks, but yeah. You draw one diplomacy card a turn. As they get used, they get discarded, then reshuffled if needed. I've already kind of talked about each of these. There's more details about them, but we don't need to go through them with a comb. But there is some stuff that I will want to. But there are places where it feels like one sentence is contradicted by one like 3 sentences later in the same paragraph. You can figure out what they probably mean, but certain cards will cause an ambassador to be banished if they fail the diplomatic role. They cannot attempt any diplomatic functions on that monarch or kingdom. This lasts a number of turns, modifying number equal to the modifying number on the diplomacy card plus 1. Again, you're going to have to write this down. Some of the personality cards may result in banishment of failures or whatever. Okay. When units of any type cross a border and enter the territory of a non-allied kingdom, the violating player is subjected to a diplomatic penalty. Any subsequent diplomatic rolls attempted on that violated kingdom are made with a -1 on the die roll, i.e. if you just force your way through Belgium. They don't go to war with you. Once a non-allied kingdom has been violated, any subsequent violations of its territory by the same player don't result in further penalties. Units in a formerly active kingdom that is suddenly deactivated and become neutral have their next friendly movement phase to leave the now neutral kingdom, or else they incur the diplomatic penalty. Such units unable to leave at that time may be voluntarily eliminated to avoid the penalty. But if you're like occupying, well, no, their fortresses don't matter. Like, once you plunder it, you've gotten your victory points. So it's a weird game. Like, you're trying to your goal is to gather victory points, I think. But you will win if you wipe everybody else out somehow. But the victory points is just a weird thing. It's like, if you're not near an enemy, you don't really have you don't have access to victory points. All right, sieges are a really weird rule. Let me relight my pipe and get to these. This is a rule that contains at least one contradiction. Okay, in order to siege a castle, and ports count as castles, I don't know how they differentiate. Is this a port and this is a castle? I don't know. Ports look like that, castles look like that. They're both the same thing. This is a port. Okay. First of all, what I don't think has been explained yet is all of these castle things have a number in them. This is not a castle. This is a scenic location. In case you want to stop and look. But this looks like a scenic location and not like a castle. Deal with it. Actually, see, they call it scenic hex. This is the picture they give. That is not, the picture here. And then I'm left with, is this a scenic location? I don't know. What the hell is that? No, that is a different type of forest. We got pine forests and non-pine forests. I do not like that. This comes from like probably someone having used a handmade map, a hand-drawn map, because they have no differentiation. I mean, obviously this map was hand-drawn originally too, but what I'm saying is they used a campaign map and like reproduced it and colored it in and stuff like that. Okay. Anyway, where are we? In order to siege something, you have to surround the castle with besieging units or their zones of siege. No defending units can be outside the castle. Outside the castle means just sitting there face up. They get turned face down if they want to hide inside the castle. And then they're available to be attacked normally. But attacking happens after siege, so you wouldn't get a chance on the same turn. The number of the number in here is the strength of the fortress. So you can see those can vary quite a bit. Yeah, this is a scenic location. Okay. This looks like it's the same color as these. Just saying. Okay. The number of besieging combat units must equal or exceed the total number of defending combat units inside the castle, plus the intrinsic defense of the castle. And there are markers. Nope. There are not markers for sieging. So there's no way to indicate that you're sieging. You could like shift a unit on top of the castle partway or something like that, I guess. But yeah, since it is a game state thing, and it's not clear that just surrounding it, just surrounding it doesn't give you the siege operation. Because if you're sieging, you can't do certain stuff. So, yeah. Units of different players may not cooperate by totaling their combat strength to besiege a castle. They can each besiege the same castle of the same kingdom at once. In such an instant, each is considered a separate siege, although since they're both hostile, a joint zone of siege could be created. I don't know if they have to agree to do that, because it gives an obvious advantage. One of them gets to roll for the siege first. Of course, the siege is not likely. And here it shows lots of pictures to explain what's very easy. The zones of siege are basically spaces adjacent to yours, and you're just cutting off the castle. But what's important is a zone of siege of a fleet may extend only into all sea or coastal. A land unit extends only to all land and coastal hexes. Now, fleets and sieges over here. Let's jump over here. If there's no fleets among the besiegers, the defenders' fleets may come and go freely and even transport leaders and combat units in and out of the besieged port. I guess that makes sense someplace like here. Someplace like here, somebody's got to be putting a zone in this. Here I could have land units here and here, and I guess the sea units can slip out. I guess that's what it's about. Reading it, it didn't make sense, but now that I look at the map, I'm beginning to see arguments. And I don't think that there's a difference between ports and castles. I think ports are just castles on the ocean, like with a sea area next to them. Now, there's big questions like, is this a port? It doesn't really matter because I could put the zone of siege into here, but I'm kind of not really getting it. I know there are no boats there, but like there's no way to get boats there even. So it's a very disturbing setup. Yeah. Okay. Once you get the three conditions for a siege, you may declare the castle besieged or under siege. There's nothing to indicate this, like I said. Combat units adjacent to a castle after a retreat before combat, though, can't be counted as besieging forces until after the movement portion of their next turn. This is the kind of rule that pisses me off. You immediately siege something, but there's one special case that's included in here. You know, somebody found something and they're like, well, that doesn't make sense that I just retreated and now I have you under siege. It's probably a 1 in 20 games thing that happens, right? Did you really need to make a rule for that? Screw it. Just let them have the siege if they retreat. It's not that big a deal to have a siege. So the effects of a siege, and this is why you have that rule. Replacements, reinforcements, and special mercenaries cannot enter in a castle under siege. Combat units attempting to leave the besieged castle must first attack all besieging enemy combat units. Well, that's pretty tough. That combat's resolved the same as normal combat. You're going to be less than 1-to-1. Or, yeah, you're going to be less than 1-to-1 because every castle has an intrinsic defense. But that may not give you a -1 or your opponent a +1 because they won't have 2-to-1. Win or lose, any surviving units may then be moved out of the castle. They may move out through any zone of siege up to their full movement allowance, but may make no further attacks in the player turn. If the castle is completely surrounded, they would have to clear the hex in order to run through it afterwards, which is pretty unlikely, to be honest, if they want to keep you in. Besieged forces can choose to attack during the combat portion of their turn instead of during the siege resolution phase. Was I allowed to do it during the besiege? Apparently this is allowed during the siege section of the phase. If we look back to the sequence of play, movement happens after sieges, then comes combat. So apparently this first thing that I just described happens during the siege phase, but it didn't tell me that. Not until here. You have to intuit these things, you know, in a lot of cases. It's just piss poor rules. The besieged forces may only advance 1 hex, though, and then only if they eliminate all units in a given hex. However, additional friendly units outside are able to join into that attack done during the combat phase. Any besieged units which attack besieging forces may remain outside the castle after their attack. This will break the siege until the enemy can get rid of the units outside the castle. Okay. Lots of weird, unfamiliar, clunky rules about the sieges, but let's keep going. Once you've got a siege declared, and as long as it's in effect, the castle can be attacked only once on each of the besieging player's subsequent siege resolution phases. To make a siege attack, you roll a die. If you get a 6, you take the castle. All combat units within are eliminated. All leaders have to take a leader fate roll, which could kill them, could capture them, or they could just end up hanging out, I guess. A plundered marker, get a few of these, is put on the castle, and it is no longer got any defenses for the rest of the game, unless there's an event or something that lets you rebuild it. Once a castle is plundered, it remains plundered for the rest of the game, and its intrinsic defense is lost. Now that says for the rest of the game. I think there was something that allowed you to rebuild a castle, but maybe I'm wrong. It's not in here. And it wouldn't be in the diplomacy deck. It might be in the magic stuff, though, but I don't think so. All right. Once you plunder the castle, you get victory points, which have to be recorded on a piece of paper. Now, you're allowed to modify the siege roll. If you have, you divide, here's how they word it. Divide the total number of attacking combat units by the total strength of all defending units. That's the total number. Plus the defense strength of the castle. Drop any fractions and subtract 1. This number is added to the attacker's siege roll. Basically, if the attacker has 2 to 1 or greater odds, they get a +1 for each level of odds that they completely get. And then we have some examples. We talked about the fleets already. Not really. Fleets contribute their strength to both defense and attack in siege warfare. Fleets may not attack a hex into which they could not possibly move, i.e. land hexes. Apparently, I can move into ports, though, which are land hexes. Because otherwise I couldn't attack. I don't know. I just don't know. But, I'm trying to reason because I don't think that there are any ports that don't completely fill their hex. If there are no fleets among the besiegers, the defender fleets may come and go freely and even transport leaders and combat units into or out of the besieged port, possibly enough to break the siege. This is where I had the question. So, I think I can establish a zone of siege with land units here. Like if I put a land unit here, this zone of siege is here. And a C unit here, I would have a siege with those two spaces. A land unit in one, a C unit in the other. I think. Because it doesn't have any discussion about coastal preventing you from doing things. And the rules wouldn't work right if you were to say something like only a boat could cover this, because then only a boat would presumably cover this as well. Yeah. I don't know for sure. Can you attack? I don't think so, because you wouldn't be able to attack across the water. What does that mean? I don't know. Is modifying a siege roll isn't attacking precisely, which makes it kind of weird here where they say land combat, where they say fleets may not attack a hex into which they could not possibly move. I'm not sure that fleets can move into the land hexes. They may just be able to modify siege rolls, and that's not attack. Maybe that's what they mean. Okay. Land combat units aboard fleets may be counted along with the fleets as a siege, in a siege. Such seaborne land units do not exhibit a zone of siege, although the fleet carrying them does, which is all you need, and may only participate in siege combat with the besieged forces. Besieging seaborne land combat units may be attacked along with the fleets by besieged land forces only during the besieged player's siege phase. The seaborne land units are not considered during regular combat phase. Now remember, you have to attack all enemy units to break your way out of a siege, I think. All right, let's read Forced Peace and then we'll stop for a while. If an allied royal castle, and only a royal castle, those are the ones with crowns on them. Note that white has a shit ton of crowns. All of its castles appear to be royal. Whereas pink has none. But I have this. I don't know. Do we have royal castle specified here? We do not on here. I think we do in here, but maybe not. No, that's not the chart I'm looking for. Nope. We don't have royal castles specified anywhere. I think it's the things with the crowns. Now, maybe the things with the crowns that are in white are royal castles for those countries. That's what it kind of looks like. But there is a white player, isn't there? No, there is not. The mercenaries are white. These are mercenary armies. And all the, okay, there is a black player. There's no white player. Now, the black player is the band of the black hand, and his little symbol is a white hand. That pisses me off too. Just make it the band of the hand, man. Anyway, but it's kind of interesting because my buddy I used to play Titan with a lot. He really loved Titan, and we would play it fairly regularly, sometimes in groups, very seldomly in two-player. He always played the black set, and it had the white hand on the black thing. You would always call it the band of the hand, and now here I'm looking at like the band of the black hand. Where are we? We're on forced peace. Okay. If an allied royal castle, not necessarily yours, is plundered and occupied, the occupying player may attempt to force the dispossessed monarch to make peace by committing heinous acts. The occupying player gets a special die roll during their diplomacy phase. This is called a forced peace die roll. This will come up later. It can be done other ways, like with a captured king. The occupying, without going into the details of it, the occupying player's ambassador, meanwhile, or referring you back here, may conduct diplomacy elsewhere as normal. The result, they may not be able to, if they're torturing the king. If the result of the forced peace die roll is a 5 or a 6, the kingdom goes into a forced peace. Diplomacy cards and diplomacy penalty may not be used for this. However, the dispossessed monarch contested the occupying forces by attacking them during his or her last player turn, that particular monarch, the forced peace will only happen on a roll of 6. During the diplomacy phase, the player occupying an allied royal castle may choose to use normal diplomacy in an attempt to deactivate the dispossessed monarch. If this is done, a forced peace die roll may not be made. Is this done during diplomacy? Yes, okay. The forced peace, you roll a die, and that's how many full game turns that it'll last. During the forced peace, no ambassadors may attempt to work diplomacy in that kingdom. A kingdom which goes into forced peace must remove all units from the map at the end of the current player turn. The monarch's identity and personality are returned to the pool of non-allied, non-player monarchs, but not separated. And the unit counter for the monarch is put on the turn record track to the turn he becomes available, which I think is one beyond the number of turns, given the way they talk about it elsewhere. Any player violating the border of a kingdom during its forced peace incurs the diplomatic penalty and causes the forced peace to end. The monarch immediately becomes available to ambassadors. Only those regulars alive at the time of deactivation will be set up in the kingdom if subsequently activated. And plundered castles will remain plundered for the rest of the game. Remember, you can only force peace if it's plundered already, so, yeah. Player monarchs who lose their royal castle are never subject to forced peace attempts. Okay. Movement, as I said, is pretty simple. I'm going to back away for a while. We'll look through it. There's some things like fleets and sea transport and stuff like that that might require a little bit of thought. But most of it's pretty easy. Right, one little important thing. Some fantasy games allow you, some non-fantasy too, allow you to move into the same hex as the enemy. This is not one of those. All ports are considered to be coastal, and it doesn't tell me. Nothing tells me of a way to differentiate between ports and castles. There's an image, but the image is not, like this is not either, right? And you try to say, oh, well, maybe it's, there's more space here or whatever. I don't think so. Because, yeah, I just don't think so. Anyway. I also don't know, like, a space says the stone face. Is that this or is it here? I would think here. This is like a location that I think you go to recruit somebody. But this kind of looks like a cliff. This doesn't. Anyway, we'll go on. I will go with where it's written. But like Huts of the Scum scans multiple things, you know. Zenfar on the Sea. It is this hex. It's next door. The stone face may be the building, maybe the city. I think that's actually the case. And I keep wanting to call this pork something, loin, I don't know. Okay. Fleets, they can enter all sea hexes, coastal hexes, and friendly ports. Okay. I wasn't sure about that. Fleets of allied kingdoms cannot end their movement in the same space. Nothing can. Sea transport, they can transport land combat units, devices, and leaders by sea. Each fleet can carry one land unit and any number of the other things. The land units can't move. The fleet moves, picks them up at no cost, drops them off at no cost. There's a specific rule to tell me there's no zones of control. That's a fairly common thing. I'm always really iffy on it. It's like, especially with a game like this where most of the people playing it probably weren't wargamers but role players instead trying this. But anyway, it doesn't hurt. Stacking, there's no limit of stacking except that you can't mix kingdoms. Combat. Combat is between adjacent opposing units at discretion of the player whose turn is in progress. He basically gets to choose what he wants to attack where, almost entirely. So, like, because there's no zones or anything, you can attack from two hexes into one, and it doesn't matter what else is nearby, whatever. After an attack has been declared, the defender can attempt to retreat before combat. We don't talk about that. We give an example of combat itself here, but we don't talk about it, the retreat before combat yet. It's going to be a die roll. For the fight itself, both players roll a die and add any modifiers. The difference between the dice is how much damage the loser takes. The winner takes no damage. If they tie, the die roll is how much damage they each take. And I'm assuming because modifiers and whatnot, the only way they're going to tie is with the modifiers, that we're talking about with modifiers. Okay. In general, modifications come from two places. One is the odds chart, and they talk about that here. The combat strength units of the attacking are totaled. The combat strengths of all defenders is computed likewise. The larger total is divided into the smaller total. Fractions are dropped, and one is subtracted from the quotient, and that'll be the die roll modifier. So if I attack you with 5 units and you have 9, there's not going to be a modifier because you have to actually reach the 2-to-1 in either direction to get the modifier. No unit can attack more than once per player turn. It's possible for a unit... There's a little bit of... yeah, I think it's going to be here. There's some confusion how they write stuff. Okay. Okay. Terrain has an effect on this, so this is a weird thing. Units defending in the mountains may add 1 to their combat die roll. Okay? That's basically a 1 odds shift. Whatever that is. It's probably... You're probably being attacked by larger forces since the attacker gets to choose, and there's no need for soak-offs or anything like that, so yeah. So it's basically like if you're facing 2-to-1, it drops down to 1-to-1. Same effect, right? Units defending in mountain passes, which apparently is something different looking. That looks like this. And it looks like they actually have ×2 on them. Yeah, they do. Have their strength doubled. Just weird. Just weird. And the graphics, by the way, this looks more like a city than anything else. The mountains look like this. I don't know. Mountain passes are cheaper to move through than cities. They don't stop you. But, okay, so I'm getting a +1 in mountains, which is the equivalent of an odds shift. But a mountain pass, for some reason or another, is, I guess, better, but I'm not really sure. Like in most cases, it's going to be the same thing. Why do two different things? I don't know. I don't believe that the game is so finely tuned to reality, especially, but notably to or to any kind of balance or anything, that it absolutely made some sort of difference to do these differently. It's just the kind of, it's just weird. It's weird. Okay, but anyway, we had a problem coming into this too. If any unit in a given stack makes an attack, all units in that stack must attack. Okay, all units in that stack need not attack the same hex if more than one enemy unit is adjacent. Then we have an example, which isn't noted as an example. All units in a given hex must be attacked as a single combat strength. The defender may not withhold any. You attack hex by hex. You can't attack two separate defenders at once. And that's why it needed to be worded that way, I think. The retreat before combat. In general, you roll a die based on the type of unit that you are. Barbarians have trouble retreating before combat. Non-human have an easier time, and then anything that's considered magical has a really easy time. And then you fall back to any adjacent hex not occupied by enemies. All units have to retreat to the same hex. If you have friendly allied combat units in the hex you want to retreat to, those can be displaced one hex. But if it can't be done otherwise without creating a traffic jam or something, you can't do it. If after a retreat before combat, a unit or stack is still adjacent to any units which were attempting to attack it, or other units capable of attacking it, which were not involved in another battle, the unit or stack may still be attacked, no second retreat before combat. Now, I get the first part. You're trying to run away from someone, and you don't really make any distance away from them. Maybe you get into better terrain, but yeah, it's kind of, it would be weird if you could get away from them. The second one's very weird, because these are attacks that weren't even announced or anything, that are just able to happen now. But anyway, leaders don't do much for you. They usually don't have a combat strength. In advanced game, one of them does. Most of them don't give you any combat bonus, although magical items or something could improve that. But they do give a movement bonus. If a stack moves its entire movement with a leader, well, that's the only choice. If you're moving with a leader, you have to stick with it the whole time. Well, you can be dropped off, but you can't move in a different direction. They're able to use the movement allowance of the leader, which will be better. There's a few leaders, maybe personality cards give combat bonuses as well. Okay, whenever a leader is in danger of being killed or captured, yeah, that's pretty vague. It's gone into later, but here's how it happens. If any units in the leader stack are lost in combat, if the leader walks through a stack of enemy units or enemy units walk through them, if the castle the leader's in falls to a siege or an earthquake, if the leader attempts to leave a besieged castle alone, he's going through a zone of siege to do that. If the fleet containing the leader is lost at sea, or if a flying unit containing the leader is lost in combat while in air. In any of those cases, you roll in this table. Okay. Now here gets some weird stuff. Usually a leader fate die roll can be forced on a leader only once per player turn. For example, if a leader's stack is eliminated in combat and the enemy advances on top of the leader, only one leader fate die roll is made. However, on that leader's next movement phase, another leader fate die roll must be made before the leader may leave the hex occupied by the enemy combat units. This is weird. It's not in that list. Leaving an enemy hex is not something that triggers one here, but now this implies it is. How many other rules are snuck in the middle of a paragraph? Yeah, a few.
Each time a leader begins his turn, moves through, or ends his turn in the same hex as an enemy combat unit, the leader's fate die roll must be made. Okay, so they clarify it, and they align with this, so I'm going to go with that. But why the hell wasn't it up here? You know, make my bullet points or my numbered list or something correct. Don't fucking leave shit out of it. It wouldn't have been hard. It would need like one word here. But there was no bother. And it makes you feel like there was no proofreading or anything to it. Or maybe not adequate playtesting. Well, there are 3 editors. Hey, Tom Wham. I wonder how much he drew. This does not look like his style particularly. Interior. He is not one of the interior artists. Interesting. But then we have, and this is really weirded me out, development and playtesting. As if they couldn't discern between the two. There's no sole developer as far as I can see. The list here, and it appears to be mainly in-house people from what I know, is very, very large. Now, maybe they weren't all involved directly in development tasks or whatever. But like, if they're taking development as gave us ideas that we used, that's kind of bullshit, right? That's a playtester. The developer is the person who protects the company's image, who makes sure and protects the customer's, final product, like what the customer is going to want. It's not someone who came up with a few ideas. It's a very singular thing. And yeah, this gave me the impression of like development by committee, which almost feels like, yeah, no wonder shit's stuck in all over the place in weird ways and not polished out. And this is 79. This is not early. TSR has been working for a while at this point. Like chainmail, maybe the original D&D, I understand why those were fucked up. But a lone leader may never be attacked, aside from assassination. The only way leaders may be killed or captured is through the leader fate die roll. In the advanced game, there are additional ways a leader may be killed. Yeah. Okay, now here we come to another weird one. A leader adrift at sea. A leader left adrift in the open sea without a fleet. Okay. That left may be doing work that I'm not thinking of. Dies on a 1 or is captured on a 6. Okay, I don't know what happens on a 2 through 5. You just stay floating there. If no enemy fleets are present. Now, there's a period here. If I were really strict about this, this is just a random rule here. No matter what happens on that die roll, if no enemy fleets are present in an adjacent hex, the leader is placed on the Isle of Fright. Okay, this still doesn't explain what happens on a 2 through 5 if there's an enemy fleet there. I think that's meant to be part of the captured roll. If he's captured and he can't be captured, he goes to the Isle of Fright. But it may mean, certainly doesn't say this, on a 2 through 5 he goes to the Isle of Fright, or on a 6 if he's captured. Or it may mean all kinds of things. I don't know. What is never answered is what happens to him if he's out there treading water. Does he have to wait for a boat to rescue him? I don't know, maybe. Maybe. Anyway, they start talking about the Isle of Fright having lots of caves. Yeah, I really need to know that. That's basically saying you can't capture someone who ends up there. Okay. And reefs. Oh, you can't put on combat units there because they're reefs. All movement into the Isle of Fright is not allowed unless a rescue is being made. Ambassadors may still work diplomacy on a castaway monarch. Yeah. Hey, bud, I know you're stuck here on this island, on this deserted island, but can you tell your subjects to serve me? Because that's what would happen. I mean, you might get them to declare peace first, but again, you're talking with the monarch, not with the people who are actually in charge of the troops. Weird, 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 weird. In a game that has these little special cases, like the one I pointed out, the retreat, that you can't fall into a besiege by retreating. Death of a non-player monarch. If one of those is killed, their kingdom goes into a form of forced peace. Kingdom goes into confusion for 1 to 6 turns. Roll a die. The monarch is going to be put over here. They can't be dipped. They can't fight. I think there was still a rule about them violating. Yeah. If any player violates the borders while it's in confusion, that player incurs the diplomatic penalty. A new monarch's immediately crowned, and the kingdom immediately becomes available to all ambassadors. If you already have the penalty, no harm in doing it, I guess. Okay. This is important. Any regulars of a kingdom which were eliminated at the time of the monarch's death remain eliminated, even if the kingdom is later reactivated under a new monarch. They're replaced via random events or whatever. There's no regular production in this. There's just random events. So that's kind of interesting. Death and capture of a player. Oh, this is a neat rule. And I mean that horribly sarcastically. If a player monarch is killed or captured, he or she is out of the game. All of that player's allies deactivate, as though they would through normal diplomacy, and the eliminated player's kingdom goes into confusion, i.e., that monarch will be available in a few turns for other people to muster, etc. Personality card is drawn for the new non-player monarch when it comes out. An eliminated player keeps any victory points previously earned and could still conceivably win the game. Okay, that's cool. I remember one of my fond memories of Dune with the Duel and Spice Harvest was that someone got knocked out on like the second turn. Maybe the first turn, and they won. They were playing the Bene Gesserit, so, and I'm all for that kind of victory, weird things like that. At the end of the period of confusion, also, on the turn after elimination, the eliminated player may opt to relinquish all accumulated victory points. Cool. If I'm not likely to win, sure, that sounds interesting, right? Randomly select an available non-player kingdom from the pool and begin the game again. Okay, that sounds kind of interesting. I thought the game was more of a player elimination game when I first read that, but it's not. It's a victory point game. Makes sense. The kingdom selected must not be in confusion, and the re-entry must be approved by all the other players in the game. So this is a weird little option. You would never do this in a competitive game, I would assume, because at least one of the other players does not want that player in the game. Simply for the knock one player out, you have more chances of winning. And, if you're in the lead or whatever, I could see almost no way of a competitive situation agreeing to that. That's why I thought it was such a ridiculous rule. But I can definitely see putting that rule in that way. It just, hits me so hard with that gives you an option. A group's gotten together. They're going to play an 8-hour game. Somebody gets knocked out in the first hour through an not an assassination, but through, some lucky shot or whatever. And it's like, well, that kind of sucks. You want to bring another character? You want to bring another one in? Just like in there are a lot of games where you can restart. I'm thinking here things like talisman, but I don't remember any that are like, you can restart if everyone else agrees. Okay. Capture of non-player monarchs. When they're captured, they're immediately placed in the nearest unbesieged castle controlled by the capturing player. If the captor doesn't have one, he has two other options: to execute the monarch immediately or to set the monarch free. In either case, the captor gets the victory points for capture, which is up here, 30 points. You can actually capture a player monarch, too. A captured leader may not be transferred from one prison castle to another and is incapable of any offensive or defensive action. The captor does not need to keep a combat unit in the castle. The intrinsic defense strength constitutes a garrison. There are two ways to free an imprisoned monarch. One, through the successful siege and plunder of the prison castle by the prisoner's own allied troops. Or, if the kingdom in which the prisoner is being held deactivates in any manner, the prisoner is released and is placed in the nearest friendly castle. You know what's not mentioned here? What happens if somebody else captures the castle? I assume they capture the king and have the same choices: execution, free, or throw in prison if available. Okay, executing a prisoner. Immediately upon capture, or on any of the captor's subsequent diplomacy phases, the prisoner may be executed. No victory points are awarded for this, although the capturing player still gets the points for the capture. Additionally, you would be double dipping. Although killing an allied monarch is worth more than capturing one, which feels kind of weird to me. Additionally, the player executing the monarch incurs a permanent diplomatic penalty on the kingdom of the slain monarch, and that'll be forever, yeah. Forcing peace on a prisoner. Each turn that a monarch is imprisoned, the jailer, during his diplomacy phase, may make a special die roll to attempt to force the captured monarch into peace. This is also called the force peace die roll. Now, that was mentioned before. This is the reference to it, I guess. It doesn't give me a rules reference, a page, anything to help me. It doesn't say see IBID or anything, I don't know. This roll, in addition to the normal diplomacy worked by the captor's ambassador elsewhere during that turn. If the result is a 5 or 6, the kingdom of the captured monarch goes into a force peace, period. Again, I guess you remember. Diplomacy cards and diplomatic penalty don't apply to the die roll. The armies and fleets of the imprisoned monarch can still move and do battle, and if they or friendly allied units, those commanded by the same player, are able to bring the prison castle under siege, the forced peace die roll will only be successful on a roll of 6. A jailer who chose not to attempt a forced peace on his or her own prisoner and work normal diplomacy on the captive with the ambassador. In this case, the diplomatic cards and penalties apply, and that's the only thing the ambassador can do. He's in the prison talking to the monarch. If the royal castle of a prisoner is occupied and plundered, by enemy troops, only one forced peace die roll may be made against the monarch per diplomacy phase. And that is done only by the jailer. Well, that castle is no longer a castle if it's been plundered, is my understanding. So, I don't know. This feels like it doesn't quite match the rest of the game. Maybe you can reconcile it. My feeling is that the new captor sends him off to another prison if he wants him. For the effects of a forced peace, consult the section on forced peace. Hey, they actually talk about it and tell you where to find it. So I lied. Okay, we can talk very, very quickly about victory conditions, although there's still stuff in the basic game. So victory conditions, you get victory points written down for plundering castles, for capturing or killing monarchs. And this is the thing here. You don't get them for executing prisoners, killing a sleeping king. Yes, that's a thing. Castles can only be plundered once during the game, and they're plundered till the end of the game. If a monarch is captured and subsequently escapes or is released, the victory points are still awarded, and they will be available again if he gets captured or whatever again. A player can still win even if not in the game at the 20 turn limit, as long as they have the victory points. We're going to stop there because this is almost like the rest of the series. This is special notes on a few races. And then the rest of it is the weird stuff. It's the advanced game. It's more magical. It's more exciting in a lot of ways, but it's chromy and going to be hard to remember. But it's why you're buying the game, honestly. This little military diplomatic game, this is not why you're getting it. Let's start looking at some of the minutiae. The trolls. Trolls are set up in 4 separate locations. They're regenerative. In addition to any replacements they receive via a random events table, they can replace one eliminated regular unit, if they have any, at the beginning of each turn. I'm assuming it's the beginning of their player turn, but if placement hex for such a regenerated troll is already enemy occupied, though, they can't be brought in. Goblins. Goblin-labeled Nithmir mountains must be deployed on the mountain and pass hexes of their kingdom. Just some setup things, but it also includes regeneration. Dwarves set up 3 wildly separated locations. They're all related and will fight fiercely to a common cause. Okay. Then we hit the advanced game, and most of this is minutia, to be honest. But it's stuff that you can add. And they give you this warning, do it gradually, don't add everything at once, you know. I think we can handle it. I mean, it's going to be troublesome. There's no question. I'm going to forget things. But, again, it is why you play this game, is to get the whole experience. Not to do it gradually and start with a kind of watered down, simplified combat game, you know? Anyway. They give a suggestion of what order to put things in. Okay, first there are barbarians. If you want to recruit barbarians, you send your ambassador on any clear terrain hex not part of a kingdom on the north or south edge of the map. It's in the brownish stuff. And then you don't get to modify this. You roll a die. Wait, maybe you do get to modify. Diplomacy cards can't be used. I don't know how you get more than a 6, but your ambassador could be killed by the barbarians, among other things. And you might have barbarians desert because you're trying to recruit more. Barbarians won't move, siege, or attack on the turn they're brought into play. It's generally the rule, I think. You could see whether diplomacy does that too. I don't recall. I know that there's exceptions to it, though, so... Yeah, they may not move or attack until the next game turn. They could siege. No limitation on siege there specifically. Maybe you could say that's part of attack, but it's not usually. Here, they may not move, siege, or attack on the turn they're brought into play. Some are allowed to attack but not move or siege. No friendly leader or combat unit may stack with a barbarian except the special mercenary leader Julut Wolfheart. Here it talks about the different tribes. Lepers. I don't know where the lepers are. They would be, I think, in special mercenaries. Don't see them. Okay, let's look at this. They're a group of diseased religious zealots. They dwell south of Shukasam. This is Shukasam. We got Haunts of the Lepers. I bet you that's where they are. They're considered a regular unit in the army of the Shukasam. Okay, so they will be part of this kingdom. But they never do any actual fighting. No other unit will enter or besiege their monastery. No other unit or leader will move through or stack with the lepers, and they are never allowed in any castle. No fleet will transport them. No enemies will attack them. However, they may be attacked by the Black Hand, who has a white hand, or his creatures, the Whirling Vortex, or the Reflector of the Eaters of Wisdom, or Boons of Greystaff. All kind of magic shit. The lepers can threaten a stack of enemy combat units, though, and force them to retreat before combat. This does not require any die rolling. The retreating units must retreat to a hex not adjacent to them if at all possible. Even if the units which subsequently may attack will initially retreat before the lepers attack, I don't know what that's talking about. No actual combat or sieging takes place with the lepers. I don't know what that's talking about. But flying units can fly over lepers. Basically, they can scare stuff sometimes. Okay, there are two magicians in the game. The Eaters of Wisdom, who start with this little wagon thing. It counts as a combat unit and as a leader. If it takes casualty checks just like regular leaders would, but the way it's worded, let's find it here. The unit is both a combat unit and a leader, and is subject to the leader fate die roll if it or units in its stack suffer losses in combat. The only way I can justify that is it's kind of immortal. It can take a loss and it may not suffer it. That's okay because they're not that powerful. They have the following magic spells and devices, a whole list of different things. A couple of them allow them to evade combat. A couple of them allow them to fight enemy units with strengths that are kind of weird. Like this can fight the enemy with its own strength. This can fight the enemy with the strength of the stack you're in, but neither of these cause casualties to the wizard's stack. Bridge allows you to walk over terrain more cheaply. The Enchanted Castle and the Mist of Groping protect them. It's Bigby's lewd hand. I don't know. I don't know if they have anything else. I don't think so. I think that's all they have is magic. Which would mean that they kind of suck to be one of them. I don't see their little wagon. I gotta find their little wagon. Unfortunately, it doesn't have this symbol that they have. And I thought this symbol was this symbol. These are regular mercenaries. These are magic items you can get. Okay. Anyway, that's them. And then we have a similar group here that sort of has troops. The Band of the Hand here. He's a necromancer. Oh, there's something great in the discussion of him. I have to do this. This is the actual rules of the game. Oh, geez, where is he? The Black Hand arrived as an exile out of the East, armed with a foul magic unknown to Westerners, and with demonic aid, it raised the Tower of Zards, where he lives, and laid claims to the shards of lore. The Black Hand has been known to go to war for one coalition or another, but prefers to remain alone in his tower practicing death magic. Oh, you can be this. This could be your main character if you get dealt it. Anyway, the Black Hand has been known to go to war for one coalition or another, but prefers to remain alone in his tower, practicing its death magic in a restrained and culturally acceptable manner. It's woke necromancy. Oh, okay. What does he have? Well, he has a guardian who shows up on the map immediately and protects his tower. I don't think it can move. No, it can't move. It can't be attacked normally. And I don't know where Zards is or whatever. It's going to be the Lost City of Kids. I don't know where Zords is. Did they say it was in the north? It might be a white space because those seem to be the capitals, and but then again it might be anything. Or did they say he was in the south? Oh, I'm just not seeing him. We got Field of the Laughing Dead. You might think he's near there. See, they don't tell me where it is here, but they did on that other page. Exile out of the east. No. Something of Shards of Lore. Here's the Shards of Lore. Here's the Tower of Zards. So that's his color. So yeah, he has kind of a gray color, not dark black. Okay, fair enough. Anyway, he's way out of the way of things. This guy gets to the Eaters of Wisdom get to pick one spell. They get to use one spell every turn, and there's some restrictions. They can't use the Enchanted Castle and the Mist of Groping on consecutive turns. That's important because those both make them invulnerable. For whatever that's worth. I mean, you're not going to be doing much if you're just sitting there invulnerable. Black Hand has the Guardian who's going to be always at the tower. It cannot be killed normally. It can only be dispelled, and it requires a magic unit to do that. And then each player rolls a die, and the higher roll, if the Exorcist gets higher, he banishes it. But the Guardian won't hurt anybody. That just protects his home. The Dead, he also starts with. It's basically a bunch of zombies. Starts in Zards with him. But it can be rebuilt by the Black Hand. He's only allowed to summon one new thing each turn. And the Dead is one of those possible if he's on a recent battlefield. And these are going to be generated by special rules that are not right after this, right? Oh, no, they are right after this. Basically, anytime there's a fight, the Black Hand player can decide he wants to play a battlefield marker in that fight, and then that becomes a place where he can muster Dead. It's where the loser is, I think. Any hexes where one or more combat units have been eliminated, including siege. But he only has 8 of those markers, but he can recycle them. Again, the wording is kind of weird on that. Made me think he couldn't at first. He can. Just by picking one up and moving it to somewhere else. All right. So the Dead is a regular combat unit that he can create at will, but he only has one of them. The Undead are animated skeletons. There are 3 of these. He can't place these on the map initially. He doesn't get these initially. He can only raise them in ancient battlefields. Ancient battlefields look like this. Do I see any skulls on the map? There aren't a lot of them. There's one. There's one. The Field of the Laughing Dead. The Field of the White Bones. There's like background information on, there's like 4 of them, and there's like background information on all of them, but one of them is like, there's no background information on this. It was lost to the mists of time. And then it gives suggestions of what it might be, you know. Anyway, they're just regular units that you can raise in a battlefield. And then here it says the new unit is placed on the hex with the black hand and may attack but not move in that turn. Nothing about siege. There's no limit to the available counters and the number of undead units that can be raised. Oh, then the number of counters. Yeah, there's only 3 of them. They're considered magical combat units. I don't know if these are. I think they are. I think all the dead are. Then he has Vented Wraiths. These are specters that you use to scare the enemy, kind of like the lepers. If first of all they move on their own, and they're supposed. Oh no, they're not. Are they? No, that's something else. I think. The enemy is allowed to retreat before combat when they attack. If he chooses not to, then they have to roll their retreat before combat to stand and stay in the location that they're in. Otherwise, they run, which makes more magical things able to withstand them better. And then if you chose to stand, you can't then decide to retreat, which feels really weird. He can summon them after he's completed all movement, and then they vanish after combat's been resolved. Now, where do they get summoned? I guess they get summoned with the Black Hand. I'm mistaking them with this other thing, this ghost army that's being shown on here, which works similarly. The Wings of Darkness are crazed flocks of carrion birds. They can also frighten units, but that's a little different. Any attack made in conjunction with them adds 1 spot to the combat die roll. I guess that's a +1 modifier. It's just a totally different way to express it. The Wings of Darkness are summoned after the Black Hand has completed all movement and vanish after combat. They may not be summoned for 2 consecutive game terms. Same thing with the Vented Wraiths. You can't summon them on 2, but you could chase someone away. I don't know how much value it is to chase someone away after you've moved. Getting a bonus in combat makes sense. There is the Colossus. This is assembled from piles of battle dead into one disgusting giant. The Black Hand has to end its movement phase in a recent battlefield. The Colossus is placed in the hex with the Black Hand and may attack but not move in that turn. That's the same as the other one. The Colossus is capable of independent movement but may not go more than 5 hexes away from the battlefield that spawned it. It's a magical combat unit that always fights as though equal in number to its opponents, regardless of the size. An adverse combat result will not eliminate it unless it is fighting against something with a magical unit or leader. The Black Hand and its creatures may stack with the Colossus, but they don't improve its attack or defense. Furthermore, if they do stack, they're subject to normal combat losses. If the Colossus is destroyed or voluntarily removed from the map, I was going to say you're allowed to voluntarily remove it, I think. I didn't know it was explicit, but here it's explicit in the realm of a conditional. Great rules writing. The Black Hand can rebuild it on any different recent battlefield. How do you keep track of that? I don't know. While in play, it's best to invert the marker of the battlefield from which the Colossus was built. When the Colossus is removed or destroyed, the battlefield is also removed. You cannot use the Colossus in sieges, and it has no zone of siege, cannot participate. The recent battlefields, I talked about them a little bit. The dead in the Colossus may not be raised from the same battlefield. Can you raise dead? You can keep raising the dead out of the same battlefield, though. Okay. Greystaff. Greystaff is in the southeast. That sounds like it's down here. Down here. Wrong east. I have problems with that. That's the Gathering. Altars of Greystaff. Okay. This is a mystical place, the true nature unknown. basically, you can move a unit in there, a combat unit. Normally you can't go in there unless you do this, and sacrifice it. This is what the scum are for. Then you can ask for a boon of Greystaff. The boons are always immediately granted. However, Greystaff will not accept the sacrifice of more than 2 regulars from each kingdom. There's only 2 scum, so. Say you have to move a regular? No, just a combat unit. Are scum combat units? Yeah, sure. No more than 2 mercenaries from each player monarch. No more than one unit sacrificed in a single player turn. Magical units and barbarians may not be sacrificed. Greystaff and its boons are not represented by counters. After sacrifice, you select your boon and point to where it's going to happen. Okay. Earthquake. This is going to destroy. You roll a die. On a 1 through 3, nothing happens. On a 4 through 6, the castle is destroyed by an earthquake. All units in the castle must be tested to see if they're destroyed. On a 1 through 3, they survive. Leaders also have to make a fate roll. The castle will be plundered, but you don't get victory points for doing it. The Devil Wind. With this one, air spirits are sent to attack any single flying unit. You roll a die. On a 4 through 6, you kill it. Any land units riding on it die as well. Tempest. Water spirits sent to attack any stack of fleets on the open sea, not coastal. Roll a die. On a 4 through 6, all the fleets in the hex are drowned, and any units in them are drowned as well. Leaders, of course, have to make a fate die roll, and they may end up treading water for the rest of the game or something. I really haven't decided what happens to leaders. Like, the rules are not clear about that, and I'll make something up. In Elric, you get blown to the nearest coast or whatever. Firestorm. A terrible fire spirit is summoned to rain a hail of fire and brimstone onto a land or coastal hex. You roll a die. On a 4 through 6, on a 1 through 3, nothing happens. On a 4 through 6, a firestorm is ignited, 1 unit is burned to death. If it ignited, then every other unit has to roll. On a 4 through 6, it'll burn as well. Any leaders have to make a fate check, but only if it's ignited. Possession. This changes the personality of any non-player monarch. The personality card on any living non-player monarch is exchanged for a different one from the random deck. The old personality is ignored and the new one applies immediately. This does not change the monarch's alliance unless it's a certain card, which I think can't ally. Steal a gift. This is probably the best of them. Greystaff sends an imp to attempt to steal a magic gift from any monarch. The gift may be any magic item acquired from the Temple of Kings or the Wandering People. Roll a die for the imp. If the roll is a 6, the gift is stolen. On a 1, it's destroyed. Otherwise, nothing happens. And you have to give it to one of the monarchs in your alliance, because each monarch can only hold 1 gift. Send a demon. This sends a hungry demon which will attack an enemy allied non-player monarch. It's resolved, making a leader fate die roll for the monarch under attack, but capture results are ignored. So you have a 1 in 6 chance of murdering someone. But not another player, so it's not really that useful. All right, more of this stuff. Do I want to do more yet? I mean, we're almost done. I'll tell you what, I'm going to swap batteries, puff my pipe a couple of times, and we'll come back and hit more of these. It's an obnoxious situation, and I just realized it happened earlier tonight, and I tried to test it, and it wasn't working upstairs, where I have these security lights. You can kind of see it almost there. That, like, they have a little switch on them to make a motion detector, and they're supposed to stay on for a certain amount of time once they detect motion. And they have an always-on position, supposedly. Well, last time I came home from the bar, I've always been leaving it always on when I come home or when I go out. It's always on, and I just flip it on or off with a switch. Because it's not like I drive up and need a light or anything like that. And nobody drives up my driveway and needs a light. If somebody's coming up here at night, I know about them and I turn the light on. But This one has consistently been a problem where it did not turn on, it didn't stay on, no matter what setting I put it on. I'm testing it now. But the one, last Friday, I came home to find that my house was dark. And I thought, oh, my light may have burned out or something. Maybe I forgot to turn it on. No, it was on, and it triggered as soon as I stepped near my porch. But it wasn't helpful. I had to walk all the way around the block to get home, not through the woods like I normally do, because I need the light to make my way home. This is staying on longer than it usually does. I don't know if it's going to turn off. But I fiddled with the one upstairs. It wasn't working the next day. It was the same thing. It would turn on and then turn off very quickly. So I went down and fiddled with it a bit. Got it working. It worked yesterday. And now today it stopped working and it's back to like turning itself off. I'm thinking probably what needs to be done is I need to get in there with a can of air and try to clean it. I'm guessing it's like spider webs or something, because I don't know what else could do it. It shouldn't act that way if the light is just burning out, It shouldn't be aware that the light is burning out, is I guess what I'm saying. Okay. The Temple of Kings. This is a mystical place in the northern mountains. It's up there. And again, it's written in a different hex. I'm fine with that once I got used to it, but All right. No combat unit can enter the hex, for that would blaspheme it. The only exception is the airboat of Armeria, if it's carrying just a leader, or the combination monarch combat unit of the Eaters of Wisdom. That was the little wagon thing. These units may never attack or be attacked while in the temple, nor may other leaders be prevented from entering the temple hex. Only monarchs may enter the temple. No mercenaries. Any number of monarchs may be in the temple at the same time. Any monarch inside the temple during his combat phase undergoes the test of the gods. He rolls a die. He might die. You don't want to do this with your main character. He might get a magic gift. Or he might fall asleep. If he dies, he's removed from play as if it were normal. Killing one of the mages this way could be problematic. It will take either the Black Hand or the Knowledge Eaters or whatever. Either of them come out of the game if you do it. See, that's still on. I don't think any setting has it on that long, normally. So now this one's acting good, that one's not. I don't know what's going on. If you get a gift, you shake them up in a cup. I got to bring a cup down here. I'm going to need one for a couple of things. And you draw one of these magical things. And we'll worry about that when we get them. There are also special mercenaries. They come in through diplomacy cards. I'm not going to worry too much about them. Some of them have troops and leaders, both. Some of them are just one or the other. Some of them are very special, like the immortal guy. Okay, this one's kind of interesting. This is one of those mercenary units. SM stands for Special Mercenary. SML stands for Special Mercenary Leader. SMS stands for text message for some reason. Okay, don't tell me why. The Wandering Jews. They have 5 different unit counters. Now they have a little wagon, and then there's a bunch of pieces that will say the Wandering People on them. Here. I guess 4 troops to go with them. What's up with them? So you muster them in any non-castle hex in the Kingdom of Entry. They're a peace-loving group with magic items that they've accumulated in their long quest for a home. They'll give any monarch who grants them a hex in which to settle. They're entered on any non-castle land hex in any friendly kingdom the player chooses. The ambassador goes there. The unit counter representing the settlement, which is this, does not move once it's placed. Entering the wandering people are a troop of soldiers and 3 magic items. If an enemy combat unit ever enters the designated settlement hex, they're driven off. If this happens, the troop and all their gifts are removed from play. Doesn't say from the game, but then it says, and their diplomacy card is set aside for the remainder of the game. So, some of these other things will say, I haven't been pointing them out because I've been skipping them. Okay. This is not one of the examples. I would be fine with this. Their diplomacy card is set aside for the remainder of the game. In addition, a die is rolled to see about their curse. 50% of the time, they'll curse the monarch who failed to protect them. 1/3 of the time, they'll curse the monarch who dislocated them. And then 1 out of 6, they'll end up cursing both monarchs. Their troop is just a regular force. They talk about them. No, they're not. They're a special force. They play music and they soothe soldiers, but they also are actual troops. And then they'll give you 3 magic items that you get to have. Now here it says 1 leader may use more than 1 at a time, which is different from the Grey Staff ones. Oh no, they give you, 3. The Usurper is another special rule which can be used if, and I already talked about this a little bit, if a kingdom is in confusion and you get the Usurper diplomacy card, you can muster the Usurper there and he'll get about half the troops of that leader, and he becomes the ruler of that kingdom, sorta, kinda. Special rules on flying units, not too big a deal. If they want to attack ground units, they have to land. Some of them have to land at the end of every turn. Magic items. 1 per monarch for these. You can't trade the gifts from the Temple of the King, and if you die with one, it's just destroyed. And I think it actually, where it says, if a monarch possessing one of these items is captured or deactivates, the item remains inert in the possession of that monarch. If the monarch is killed, the item vanishes and is out of play for the remainder of the game. Again, clear, it's gone for the remainder of the game. That is totally different from the 2 that worried me. Removed from play, which is kind of like out of play, and removed from the game. Those are the 2 that I'm really worried about. I don't know exactly what the meaning of those is. I'm pretty sure removed from the game is, gone for this play. Removed from play, I'm not really certain about. If they don't, it went out. Yeah, that's on the timer. Okay. There are some optional rules. First one, Faces of the Sea. Faces to the Sea. That's this. Which otherwise would just be, what's that? A scenic space, I guess. Fleets may not embark troops in any mainland hex along the coast of Ramboon within 3 hexes of it. The sunken city of Patros is accepted from this. Fair enough. Variable game length. Not really variable. You don't roll a die or anything like that. You just set it to a different game length. I may change how long the game goes, depending on, if I feel like I should play it longer. But right now, everybody is going to be playing as if it's a 20-turn game. And I don't know how to change it, because short of destroying every enemy, which is different, it's a different victory condition from what the game actually presents. It's on a different line. I really I can't think of anything that you'd want to do. Like extended 10 turns just at random at the end? No. Secret Turn Order. I like this one. I don't know if I really need it. But I would think about playing this opposed more. It's just something that gets in the way in a solo game, so what the hell? All right. Then there's Oath of Fealty. This is a way of balancing the game, actually. You give people friends that their ambassador has a bonus against, and you assign them kind of at random or whatever. It's neat. Not going to do it. Free Passage Sanctuary. This is asking neutral kings to let you pass through their territory without disturbing them. I don't really mind this one. Once per turn, a leader can ask to enter. On a 4 through 6, they're allowed free passage through the territory. If they're denied free passage, they can move, but they'll get the diplomatic penalty if they invade or, violate the nation. If it's granted, the leader may bring any devices or gifts, but cannot enter any combat units. Okay, not too helpful, to be honest. Each separate leader must make the free passage roll on their own. I'm perfectly fine with this. There are things like the Temple of the Kings. Your monarch is not able to teleport the way your ambassadors do. So you would have to walk all the way to that thing if you wanted to do that. So yeah, this might help. Balance of Power. This one intrigues me. I'm not going to play it, but I could see using it. If one player has accumulated at least 3 more allied kingdoms than any other player, the player with less allies may each randomly take 1 ally from the pool of non-allied non-player monarchs. If only 1 non-allied kingdom is available for 2 players, roll dice. The higher sum gets it as an ally. I don't know, maybe. If no non-allied kingdom is available, the players with less allies each immediately get a free diplomatic action roll and can use diplomacy cards to attempt to deactivate. I think this is a one-time thing. And I kind of like the idea that if anybody gets that big a jump, other nations would be worried about them. The problem is I'm not really convinced that all the nations are equal. Like, look, there are a lot of pieces for this one, or this one. Those are all 1 strength pieces. I'll think about it. All right, that is the rules to Divine Right. There's a bunch of... I didn't go over the game effects of these things, so I'm not going to read through them all. But again, there's a fair amount of information about the world and whatnot, which is kind of neat. I certainly don't mind that. It would help, like, if you wanted to use this as part of your, role-playing campaign or something instead of something else. It's too light. It's even lighter than things like the Greyhawk Gazetteer was and stuff, but whatever. Maybe this is really exciting to you. I don't feel like the world is that interesting, that I'm all that intrigued by all of this. And honestly, the world that's built feels kind of like a slapped together D&D campaign. It doesn't really feel like the kind of depth that I'd want if I was looking at it as that for a product. I got better information, and I had a friend who did this, by the way, who tried to work Albion to use that as his campaign for, I think, what's it called? Dragon Quest. It's the SPI role-playing game. I didn't feel like that was particularly rich either, but that at least had
a fair amount of characters and a little bit of feeling. The colors on this remind me a little bit of Elric, too. I talked about Dragon Pass. Elric also had really kind of garish colors all over the place. Did we do Elric yet? I don't know. I thought I did. Anyway, we shall see how much fun it is. It doesn't feel grounded the way that, like, Dragon Pass did. It doesn't feel absolutely grounded in a particular story. It feels kind of like Elric did, to be honest. This kind of, look, you can kind of randomly gain control of things and whatnot. There's no real through storyline. Oh, the one that I wanted to do as a role-playing campaign was Dark Emperor. Because that was a great Gistikian game. That felt like it was such a weird world in certain ways. Alignment with runes and stuff like that, which obviously appeals to me more than, like, oh, there's a random powerful wizard here, or this. This just feels, I don't know. It feels like a weaker version, a watered down version of Greyhawk. Yeah. And obviously, Glorantha is rich and everything. Anyway, we shall see how it actually plays. I don't remember it being particularly painful to play when I played it long ago, but I wasn't running the game. The guy who owned it was. I think he was pretty light on giving us the rules. He didn't give as much as I just did. Nobody ever should, But this is how I teach a game when I get people to play too. So there is that. And I also don't remember thinking, oh, wow, I really want this game. That was not my feeling when I played it out. I don't remember personality cards. I don't remember much of anything. So, like, it felt kind of like Kings and Things or something, where you're just collecting up groups and fighting each other. And the victory conditions, I know that they don't excite me. This idea of, well, I just have to do things and I get points for the things that I did. Obviously, the longer you can last, the better that exists. All right, up it goes.